You've got
30 minutes on going on today.
Stevie Nicks. Stevie Nicks. Guys, please, street. So just, let's go. Where's the outside one?
Thank you.
Busy sequence. Welcome, councillors, members of the public, staff. This meeting is being held here at Summer. It's being live streamed and will be available to view on council's YouTube channel. All members participating by audio visual conference will count for the purposes of the meeting for in accordance with the clause 25D of Schedule 7 of the Local Government Act 2015. The information, Councillor Miller, what do you read there?
It's very clear that we will make use our skills through our discussions to operations in order to make responsible and appropriate decisions for the benefit of the South Warwick district and the larger. We commit individually and as a council to the principles of integrity and respect, following the vision that is we've got in our long-term plan strategic document in order to energise, unify, and encourage our district.
Thank you, Councillor. Apologies. I have no apologies tonight. So we have a full council. Conflicts of interest. Are there any conflicts of interest in the business? Acknowledgements and tributes. Any acknowledgements or tributes to the That's got a couple.
Oh, well, I just wanted to acknowledge the passing of two of our members in our rural community who generational families. We've got Mr. Johns, and apologies because that's how I've always known Mr. Johns and also Mrs. Donaldson. So it was a bit of a blow for our area in the last couple of weeks, losing both of them. The work that they've done for our rural community has been phenomenal, and their children are certainly carrying on the hard work. Has been instilled from the family. So I just wanted to acknowledge them both, and I do apologise for them their first name, but I'll find you.
I'd also like to acknowledge the 4 out of my 4 veterans who are currently cut off with the weather, and I'm sure the voting manager will be out there as soon as the 5 boards are seated, and we'll do everything we can to restore access. Do we have any public participation today? Extraordinary business. We have no budgets to extraordinary business. Right. Community board and board standing committee reports. I don't think we've got anyone here present or would like to speak to. So now on to A8. Considering the minutes from the 30th of June and the 14th of July 2022. Are there any corrections needed? Please don't leave me down here.
Sarah. So just A3 acknowledgements and tributes. It was the passing of Niniwa. There's no I at the end of the name. Yeah, so that can just be changed. That'd be great.
Anything else? Right, do we have a mover that the minutes and public excluded minutes of the council meeting held on the 30th of June and 14th of July 2022 are true and accurate? Moving here, Councillor Dean, second Councillor Plummer. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. All those against, the motion is carried. C1, we're moving to. So we're just shuffling these round a bit, but there was a request and I agree. C1, Three Waters will be better off tranche 1 funding decision. Do we have a move to receive this report? Thank you very much, GP. Seconded. Thank you, Lee. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, the motion is carried. Stefan, Mr. Corbett.
Thank you for bringing this forward. Obviously, with the pressure on our motion, we're trying to make all this Stefan's here with us, so be available for some of the emergency use. That's what we're
So I think we've got the report, thank you, and I'm sure we've all read it. Do you want to just possibly give us a bit of a brief overview and then be available for this?
Yep. I'm Chair. Good morning, everyone. Look, the paper is as read, but I just would like to make 3 points, I guess. The first one is in designing this operational fund, community wellbeing fund. We've tried to preserve for councillors and for management as much flexibility as we could in the design. So what we tried to do is allow access to this funding in a way that gives ultimate flexibility to us to decide how to use it. So that means that this council and the future council, which is coming, will be able to advance LCP projects using the fund, but also support community projects that meet the criteria of the fund. So the first thing I guess I'd like to highlight is that we're trying to design something that preserves flexibility in space decision. The second thing is that the sense that we're getting as management, at least, is that the community is very great at the moment. Post-COVID, or still in the grip of hopefully what is the last wave of COVID, people are suffering quite badly. I think people are disconnected. They're afraid. I think that's particularly true of our elderly people in the community, but not exclusively. The community is in need of this community wellbeing fund. It would help generate them, take some pressure off them. It's not just COVID, it's the economic conditions that everyone is experiencing at the moment. South Wairarapa communities are, in our view, doing it tough. So a community wellbeing fund that supports good ideas and good initiatives, in our view, is well timed. And I guess the third thing about the fund and the way that we've tried to present it to you, after listening carefully to the feedback that you provided to us, is that this is an opportunity for us to really listen to our community, really work with them on projects that they care about, help them apply to funds, market the fund properly, and really be more active in the inception and then the design and the delivery of projects for the community. It's a positive, constructive way for us to engage with the community, and it differs from what we've done before through, say, a grant sector. So, look, those Private at the fund and what we've tried to do, we've done the best we can to give you something that's really worked, that you can be proud of. If I look at it, I think those are the things that leak out, I think flexibility, responding to real need in the community right now. And working with the community, listening to the community, not just giving them grants, but actually working alongside them. Those are things that I'd like to highlight. Thank you.
I've got a couple of questions and then I'd like to bring up councillors. When I read the application process from the DIA and it was discussed at rural provincial, it seemed incredibly prescriptive and bureaucratic. And what you've proposed here is a very elegant solution to get around it. Is this likely to be accepted by the DIA as a methodology of managing it?
Thank you. What we've done is prior to in the design and prior to bringing this to you today, we have run the whole thing past our partner who was allocated to us from Seattle Crown Infrastructure, who are responsible for administering the fund and are our close advisor on this. They have said that in their view, everything that we're putting forward here in this paper is working.
Excellent.
And they have added that a number of other councils around the country, because everybody is applying at the moment, of course, a number of councils around the country have chosen to use operational funds in a similar way, mainly because they just haven't had time to do anything else. They haven't been able to get into the community and consult around that because of elections and because of the 30 September for applications. So, but to be fully honest with you, Chair, that's Crown Infrastructure Partners who are the nominated advisor. We won't know until we put this to DIA, but we are told that we're on the right track.
Councillors, any questions?
This is a good start, and it's good. I saw that you discussed it with the representative. It's just in terms of timing, because I see that there's very few representatives around the country dealing with these councils. So you're confident that we'll meet with depots.
If we are able to receive your approval to move ahead today, for example, then we'll be under the pump because we will have to move immediately to put the whole application together, test it with our Crown Infrastructure Partners, see if we can get a draft in front of the DIA decision makers, so we can, get a little bit of early advice, and then submit by the 30 September deadline. And I'm confident that we can do that because we're only being asked to put forward a detailed concept. But we're not being asked to give them absolutely everything, all the rules, all the fund criteria in terms of reference, all that detail can come later. We're only giving them detailed concept. But that relies on getting a clear instruction and us being able to do that under delegation. But if those things happen, then I'm confident we can push it through and be on time.
Thank you. I just, sorry, just had one other question. So in the makeup of the team, you talked about governance group, councillors. I just wanted to ELT, etc. But I just wondered if you should include the mayor as well. I think it would be important to get the mayor on that governance group. Just, I don't know.
I think we can play with that. I mean, I'm also a council, so I'm included within that remit. I think that's a discussion for probably the next council with regards to the distribution of the funds.
I think the intention, if I could just briefly explain that, I think the intention was to demonstrate to councillors that governance should be represented. So governance should be wide and inclusive. That was the way that we signalled the participants, Mana Whenua Council community, was purely to signal that we've been running an inclusive process.
Councillor,
Thank you for the presentation and review, Mr. Chair. When will we hear back on the proposal recommended for which?
It's a fairly fast process. If the application is submitted on time and it's successful, then DIA telling us that there's a 6-week turnaround on applications. I would say within 6 weeks, we would have a clear signal at least as to whether we were on top of it, minor adjustment, or we've been unsuccessful and we need to go back to the drawing.
In your successfulness, who determines how you're going to work? Is it purely the LTV to describe the package?
Thank you. So the rules that are laid out on how we operate by DIA are relate to how we report, the fund criteria, and procedural dimensions of fund. The way that we choose to set ourselves up, our governance, funding criteria, in addition to what DIA stipulate, what we target in terms of our spending, it's wholly up to the council that receives funding.
I'm keeping you going with this bit because it might be that 3.2 needs to have an addition at the end of the resolution to say formed by council resolution. So to clarify that the council will make up the governance split. So that's, yeah,
Yes.
I think that would be great clarity of the resolution. So yes.
Yes, thank you. Just on once again on 3.2, I know how difficult this to actually get representatives across the community. Would we not maybe kick off with work being actually marriage standing? Or if you consider the option?
I think we can decide that if the resolution will be create that group, but have that discussion with them, you know, to make sure that it's true.
Yes, yes, which of party goes with together. Thank you.
This is an enabling resolution, so I wouldn't get down.
So this is
Just simply saying, we're going to come back to you.
But we can certainly, councillors, we can certainly take a note of that, and as an issue that we'll address later on, whether it's the UC, whether it's Mana Whenua in terms of giving country representatives or even most.
I think it's got just
Yeah, thanks, David. Very well put together was. That's a key to it is recommendation for to delegate authority to the CEO. Because of economic changes. You know, this is a start. And I guess what you actually put into DIA will be slightly different.
This is the shape.
Yeah.
It's a $1.88 million operating fund. It's the main targets are community projects that we work ground up with people and the LCP. Its governance will be a representative group of everyone who needs to participate. We will have fund criteria based on the DIA criteria, but we'll also include our LTP and space plan inheritance. Beyond that, it's the detailed process and rules, and that's really what we will delegate because purely because of the time that we're the constraint that we're operating on. But as we design those things, decide those things. Of course, we don't.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Stephen, just getting back to the remark that made, mainly on community projects, I would pay for this money to go anywhere else, that's community projects. Just to make sure that it's getting to where it actually needs to go to and not on.
Well, and I think that would be taken into account the government's group overseeing the same as these two sort of. Yes,
It was meant to be for the community.
well, I mean, that decision would,
Councillor Rich, so we've certainly taken account of feedback that we received from multiple councillors when we were discussing this with you informally. And the feedback was, please don't spend money on yourselves. You know, please don't create a whole bureaucracy around us, use up the money that we shouldn't spend on the community. Now, that was well written. We will use some of this money to deliver the projects, on time, on budget, and to the quality standard that is agreed. So I'm not saying that we won't use some of the better off funding, this 1.88 million, to project manage and deliver these projects properly to the community. We will need to do. We will keep that to a minimum. But this, in order for this fund to work properly and for projects to come out and be successful, not an embarrassment to people, then we do need to use some of the money to project manage that process. And so we will do that, but we will do it to only the extent necessary for the fund to be successful.
anyone else? Rebecca?
Thank you, Alex. Thanks, Stephen. It's actually really exciting to see a proposal like this, which gives flexibility, and I can see that with the appropriate governance in place, that will happen. That there's a wealth of opportunities there. It really does look like it's just a fantastic community grant, and I really look forward to seeing what comes out of it. My concern is this, and it seems to me that there's actually a recommendation missing, and it's this. Do we have to accept this money as a council, and should we not be having a conversation around actually accepting this? Because with the first tranche of funding, with the three waters, we did have a conversation around the table about whether we should accept that. And I know the rules have changed regarding opting into 3/4 or opting out. There is no opt out now, we're all opted in. But we haven't had a conversation around the table about whether or not we should actually firstly receive the money before we determine what use that money actually is. And I would like to have a conversation about that. So can we do that?
Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Fox. It certainly is an exciting opportunity. It's not often that you have access to $1.88 million of funds for our community at the time when they can really. The only comments I would make in relation to whether or not we take a funding, and of course, you're entitled to not take the funding and refuse the opportunity. The only comments I'd make in relation to that are, one, to my knowledge, and I have been consulting with many councillors as has the team. To my knowledge, no other councillor in New Zealand has yet refused the opportunity. On the contrary, councillors across New Zealand, even those who are opposed to this, are making their applications and taking up this opportunity. So I just want you to be aware of that before we have a discussion about whether it's a the other thing is that, as we made quite clear in the earlier discussion we had with you on this, your taking up of this funding is not a legal commitment to the privileges. That has been made very clear through legal opinions. Yeah, great. So, look, those are the only two things that I want to put out there prior to the discussion amongst council.
So I'm going to ask Alice, do you have your opinion about that as well? But we will come back to that.
That's okay.
Sort of sticks in my throat a little bit to say we have to make money. Right, so it is, that's exactly what it is. It's not very unfortunate. Because there is no way to link that this offer to say you're better off. Yes, that's it. We have to accept this money, but we have to take this money. Well, I'm really concerned about drip feeding the money into the community and little ways, and I'm not totally convinced by your comments about the hardship of the community. There is definitely hardship in the community. There's a financial hardship, which is caused partially by COVID. When I look at Greytown, I see the increase in sports participation of all ages, the increase in our clubs in Greytown, and I can't talk for the other two towns because I don't know as well, but certainly the resilience that's been shown in Greytown, when I look at the massive increase in soccer, for example, of all ages, and when you know, we've got 3 women's soccer teams now, I think, you know, that tells me that there's actually good resilience in the community that is doing. What is driving the hardship is the lack of many years of infrastructure investment, which we're trying to deal with. And if we get this $1.8 million and we drip feed it into community engagement, the opportunity to actually really make a dent in the infrastructure deficit is lost. And I completely understand the idea of when I look at the government's view on this, about the better off package. The first point is transitioning to a sustainable low emission economy. The second point is delivery of infrastructure. And the third part is the improvements of community wellbeing. Okay, so we've gone the opposite way. So community wellbeing for small things, and I just think we're going to miss an opportunity. We are desperate for money. We need to refocus.
So, I mean, in terms of I take that point and it aligns as well with the discussion that Brenda's had is an opinion on where this money should go. This resolution, and if you look at the discussion document of 3, the economic development, social, economic, environmental well-being. So there's still a lot of a way to go to have those discussions. What we've got to do is allow the staff the mandate to go ahead and apply. Okay, so those discussions I think will come up.
Okay, well, that in mind, I'm not quite sure why we would need paragraph 3 of the options, let's say, of the recommendations.
Paragraph 3.
So 3.3. They're all about what we're going to spend the money on. First thing is to get the money, and then there's the discussion at a later time.
It still doesn't include. It doesn't include. So what it's saying is we may decide, and the community will be actively encouraged to promote, but it doesn't mean to say that the actual spending will be in a particular area that's a future discussion once we've got this over the line.
Okay, so that's like how I agree. I see this sort of why
It's up to council to make that decision, and we may, you know, and that is it for the new council to do, and the new training. But we've got to get this over the line to a point.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The elements of paragraph 3 represent the minimum that we feel we could ask DIA to accept as a general conceptual frame. Unfortunately, it isn't possible for us to just apply and receive the money and then tell DIA how we intend to spend it. So what we've done is give them the minimum information that we can, which if you look at paragraph 3, it's basically only saying we'll create a fund, we will use it to accelerate LCP projects, we will use it on community projects. That's all it really says, and then it makes a suggestion about governance. But the chair is correct in saying how we deal with whether we have a proportion between LTP and community projects, or whether we decide to phase it over time in a particular way. All of those things, all of those flexibilities, are still to be determined, but I need to be able to go back to DIA with a minimum viable concept,
Yeah.
and that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah. So we can have some more discussion with the resolutions after we sort of following that. So I still want to go back to what Councillor Bonsley brought up with regards to the obligations it places on us. If I could say that I'll take on board that all councils, including the ones that try to remove themselves from the processes. We have heard from Minister Mahuja as well that places an obligation to the gang, and she said that in public and on TV. I think it would be difficult to place a moral stand on this and to find the community what is available. This reform is being done to us, not with us.
And it's a conversation that needs
And I-
to be
yeah.
had in public.
And I also am reluctant to do anything that seems to be an approval of the way the government is treating this process. However, I think we were about to take and doing our communities.
We don't want to disadvantage the community.
Yeah.
By something which is you've identified as being done to local government as opposed to happening with.
There has been no consultation.
So just very, so just for clarity, they perform the questions and answers from the Department of Internal Affairs regarding does this bind councils? So the question is if a council participates, i.e. signs up and takes the money, will this still allow council to be opposed to three regions? The official response, and was supplied by the Minister, is that DIA acknowledges the importance of councils independently expressing their views to a formal program. The funding agreement, the Bedrock package, does not prevent or prohibit councils from doing this. Okay, so they're very clear, and there's more detail, that this is not a gang on councils in terms of being able to express their views on three regions. So I know people know that, but again, it's for the public record to make sure that to hear that advice.
And it's important to do that too, because I think, if we don't have free speech, we don't have democracy. And that's what this is about. My question isn't actually around the proposal, because I think that what Stefan and the team put together is a really good proposal. Like I said, I think it's fantastic, and no one wants to see the community disadvantaged when there's an opportunity put in front of them. But the first question is, as a council, do we resolve to accept the money that has been offered by DIA, and then we actually go through and do this information?
So I think what either that or you vote against the resolutions as they come up to express your disagreement.
No, I disagree with you.
Okay. No, I get that.
Our other being given funding before, we as a council agreed to accept the funding or not accept the funding.
So-
actually never process.
So have you got some wording around that resolution 1.1?
Well, yes, it would be, we received the Three Waters funding decision report. The second recommendation would be to receive the money from, or agree as a council to receive the money from DIA.
Received, we have received.
I do agree to apply to the
Yeah, so we need to price.
Yeah, but it's applying up to,
Yeah.
actually agree to apply.
Or that level or something.
Thank you, right.
You could chair, perhaps amend to agree as council and vote as opposed.
That's easy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not-
Yes. Sorry, then you item one.
True.
So I'll read out two, and then I'll do 3 through 4 as a block. Okay. Yeah. So do we have a mover to agree to and delegate authority to the CEO to enter into a funding agreement between DIA and SWDC and Crown Infrastructure Partners Limited as the model for Three Waters Reform as well?
package transfer funding of 1.88 million. Moved by Jimmy, seconded by councillor Fox. Any more discussion on this? All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, motion is carried. Thank you, councillor Fox. And then I'll take it as read. Do we have a move to accept items 3 through 4? With the inclusion of the words in 3.2 at the end, formed by council resolution with regards to the government. With councillor Fox, seconded. Very much. Brenda, all those in favour, please say aye. Those against, motion is carried. Good discussion.
Thank you. Now we need another 18 hours to move to go already.
Okay, we now considering report P1 minutes of the council. Do we have a move to receive the report? Thank you, councillor Fox. Thank you, councillor Ems. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, the motion is carried. Do we have any comments on the minutes from the community board? Also, DIA funding of the any discussion? Right. So there's no further comment. Do we have a mover to do a mover for resolutions 2 through 8? Thank you, councillor Winslow. Second, councillor Hay. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, the motion is carried. We now move to B2. Assets and Services Committee recommendation. We have a move to receive the recommendations for assets and services. Thank you, Lee. Second, all those in favour, please say aye. All those against, the motion is carried. No, you all have that first name to the last. Councillor Gibson, for the speaker.
Well, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. We want to discuss the assets and services. I agree with all the boxes. Yep. And it's been recommended by assets and services that we support.
Councillors, any questions?
As the one of the locations shares site with the local train, have they been advised that this is going to go on, and have they been out with it? Because I mean, they rely a lot on contributions from the company.
I know it was discussed with with management and policy by the time of separation. Right?
Would they actually involved?
Always about consultation.
I'm not sure whether the management, but they could certainly one of the roles to project being covered.
Yeah.
So it just concerns across the group, they have provided some information back to Shane Atkinson in terms of the location, and that's the project that I don't believe that writing, I guess, this council has said, aware of our spoken last week, and he said he was a little concerned about the precise location, or sorry, more fencing around basically. Yeah. So he was going to show about that. He was pretty
To your point, would be added to that resolution, sorry. The following recommendations. So this is agreement for development of Whenua, Māori Standing Committee, and other uses of.
yeah.
And may I say this actually did come to the Māori Standing Committee meeting. And it was looked at and there was discussion, but, everyone was happy with that, you know, with the project. So just thought I'd add that in there because I think that meeting was after this one, so,
There's a leader of support.
Yeah.
I just said, it was full
community hall
last night.
last night, yeah.
Sit and discuss their feelings and that, so we really wanted, marriage standing, they were happy with that. Yeah, that was now right, so, yeah, it's all about.
But you're very happy with the research that we did with the consultation. Yes. But you're quite like ready to speak back to what the other users of the space are comfortable with the changes.
I'd just like to commend the Greytown Trails Trust. We've done an outstanding job together, and we're not liable for any funding, so which is interesting. And then I've been very good about consulting. He's
Very thorough.
yeah, and we're not totally. So just like
We're getting students.
I just wanted to say that the part of this.
You're right. Consultant.
That's what's
True,
really
actually.
neat.
Yeah.
So one of the comments as far as that committee was this is a different one, Greytown Trails Trust, which we determined fits more. And that's one of the comments to speak back to me is that the involvement in this unfortunately has been as fruitful as we would have liked, I guess, to systems on the project. So hats off to Shane. And given that it is good support, we accept this.
At the same time, I'd like to acknowledge the amazing amount of work that the Greytown Rail Trust actually put into Haitumupai and also Papua Marae. So the fact that the two of them worked in conjunction and were able to put forward this project, I think it's shows communities working together.
And I think they co-rule as well.
Yeah, and
It was certainly discussion.
yeah,
And there is a planning day on Sunday.
yeah, that was a little bit.
Yes.
Planning day on Sunday. It's a big deal.
Yeah, before we there, bring the going.
Yeah,
Right, so
delegated.
do we have someone move that the recommendation to council to approve the Nuku tongue twister, subject to an agreement with relevant and multi-state committee and other uses of thank you, Colin. We see that all those in favor, please say aye. All those against, motion's carried. Now B3, which is the finance order for this recommendation. We have a move to receive the report. Thank you, Lee. Seconded. Alistair, all those in favor, please say aye. All those against, the motion's carried. Lee, would you like to speak to this?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So we've actually been with this register for some time now, and the mayor has done some incredible work on this. And I think we're now in a position to actually move forward. And we're presenting up at the next meeting. So grateful to all the team. It's in good shape. So at the last meeting, we just talked about reporting, and so it was agreed that we recommend the report going forward. Obviously, there was a substantial risk that appeared. There were coming forecasts that we did so from both so just taking the paper as read, and so somebody's looking at the shape of the
Yeah, no, thank you, and thank you to staff for this. It's something we needed for some time. It's scary reading at times, but at least we know as opposed to don't regarding the risks. And so thank you for bringing us up to date, even though we have actions to do that as a result. Any other comments from the councillors? Paul?
Just got one question, Melinda. This, it says fraud and corruption. I just wonder whether we should maybe put a read of the reading here to include financial.
Probably more a current question.
Also, I did just.
Right.
I just wondered whether we should encompass financial issues, because it's not strictly just it's current costs, just for corruption. So
A financial arguments around.
yeah, so just a little bit.
We can.
Yeah, and it's just a small one. Just think if you read the reading of it.
So could you repeat that, because I don't think it's going to get called on live, and because we're speaking away to the microphone.
Oh, so I was thinking.
So just a brief synopsis of the discussion.
So if you look at the risks, I don't think one of the risks was corruption and fraud, but actually the total risk is also financial measures. So I just think the wording needs to include other financial issues that.
So we can start move on next. Right, do we have a mover to receive the following recommendations from to recommend the outcome to give updates to the significant risk measures to the financial risk committee on a quarterly basis. Moved and Lee seconded. Thank you, Rebecca. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, the motion is carried. On to C2, which is the South Island District Dog Cover Report. Do we have a mover to receive the report? Jimmy, thank you, Brenda. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, the motion is carried. Mr. Mead. Your pet project.
Your head.
So I'm going to start just introduce this. So as you will be well aware, we're finally getting to a place where we are able to construct a compliant dog pound. I recommend Brick, particularly for the innovation in the design and trying to find a solution that will do it. So as we're the budgets for this, we're set at 345 LTP. You'll be very well aware of the cost escalation that's going on in the market for materials, goods, and so forth. And so the quicker that we can proceed with completing the pounds, the better. So you have before you, we've done detailed budgets, but the detailed budgets have no contingency. And as you know, in any project, it is good practice to have a contingency in case there's unanticipated cost. So we've got two options for you. Option one is to increase the budget by 75,000. That means that's the minimum that we can do, and does not provide any contingency should the costs overrun. And so option two gives you a further option to increase. We provide 10% contingency just in case there's cost escalation. We're going to try and make sure we deliver this on budget. Record's been almost watching this all sorts of ways to make sure that we're on track to within the original budget. And that's the set. It is good practice in this project to make sure there's contingency. But however, it's up to you to make that decision. So that it's an increased CapEx, which is, so the financial implications are in paragraph 2.4. If you have any questions about those. So you want to get on with it? We're all ready to go. And we just need your agreement to increase the budget. It is unbudgeted, the increase, and it's really whether you want to include a contingency in that. And so we can actually sleep at night with no sleep contingency.
As we started, matter, it seems to be quite a lot of social comments. That it's fantastic that we are the only council that actually has a plan and that budget to actually put it out after over 5 years of discussion and development. Open it up to councillors.
Can I just get some clarification? So I think it might have been in the, I'm just, I was just trying to confirm it with Colin. There was actually some budget put aside originally for account.
240.
So there was 240, so 340, did we just put an extra 100,000?
That was in the over even of 2021.
Yes, so that's gone through with the last, this current one, so that's where we get to the 340, that's what I wanted to clarify, we're not actually sitting at 580.
No.
Okay, so we're at 340,000. Perfect, thank you. Yeah, I know, I think we would need to bring it down.
Sure. Can I ask a couple of questions, please? In the 4.2.4, we're saying you there and building consents. Are they included in the extra money, the cost of those consents, are they included in the extra money that you applied for?
Yeah, so the total of all that is the total cost is compound. So it's more than just a pound, and that's very clear differentiation between what was originally sought. When we originally sought this way back in 2015, you were looking at just building a pound on the existing site. So what you've now asked for, hopefully what's done is you're actually getting a full compound plus the pound plus the soft grid as well. So that's the escalation of costs. Actually, you've moved the original concept right through to a completely new concept and asked for extra things.
And if I could mention, I think the reason we moved from Johnston Street is because the inability to get a lease change in land to enable the size of the town and the county's.
The second question is, if the approvals go ahead for the extra funding, do we have a time frame at this point when you envisage this will start or finish?
The full one sign. And this one, we're looking for really indicative time frame for 16 weeks. And so everything else has to be in place for once the containers come up and put onto piles down, and for different reasons, just trying to get the machinery around and up. So we want to slow it in so that basically the last bit would be but if we look at that 16 weeks, we're hoping that
I just say some project, I commend you for the work that you put into it, and I also commend you for thinking outside the square as well as the design, but in the water saving things, the electricity savings that you're looking to put in, so those environmental things that are going to not now impact on the community. Well done.
So we've got Colin, Brendan, and Alistair.
Thanks very much, Rick. Thanks for the report. And yeah, it's interesting because I got just a feeling that we're going to be a little bit more expensive than what we originally anticipated. One of the things we need to be really clear on is getting the message out to the community that one is the cost of meeting compliance with MPI in terms of the setup is excessive. And the feedback I've had, we could build a house for the same sort of money and buy a block of land. So it's really important that we that our community understands what's actually involved in terms of costs. You know, the structure itself is only part of the overall cost. I think it's really important that we get this out to our community. We have requirements in terms of the animal welfare issues and certainly around things. So I think if we're going to send a good message out to our community about justifying this expense, you have to couple that with the issue, I suppose. So,
yeah, that's a very good point. And I think it's probably missed on most people is that the structure has to be hospital grade. So what you're going into your veterinarian scenario is what we need as well. So there's no seams, there's no porous material where pathogens can grow and cause disease. We've been very, very lucky over here at the moment. We have not had a parvo outbreak in regards to our facility. We have to maintain it because once you get into that, you're in deep doo-doo. And so MPI, the biggest thing is about disease management and everything we do. So it's about longevity in terms of the materials you're using as well, but also in what they potentially can grow pathogens in. So even when you look at concrete's still got to be sealed because it's porous in its own state. Wood, as soon as they scratch, it grows pathogens.
Yes.
So exactly that. The initial shock that people will see is exactly what you said. I'm sure the housekeeper, but it needs to be hospital grade, and therefore that's why we're looking at stainless steel, aluminium, we're looking at sealed units. So that's where the costs do come.
Thanks. Really appreciate it.
Right, I'd like to ask you this again, and I'm pretty certain I've asked you this before. Can you just go over why we can't get a private
Yeah. So it's a risk-based thing as much as anything. In terms of the type of animals we're putting in there, we have no guarantees as to what their history are, both in terms of medical but also behavioural. And if I enter in a contract with a private kennel, I need to secure the space on a 24/7 basis, 365 days, whether I've got something in there or not. That's the impact on the private entity. Secondly, I can't guarantee what state in terms of health-wise that animal's in. And so if it has a disease and it spreads through the whole kennel, then the liability ends up, with us. Secondly, if they exercise it or one of their staff members gets hurt, council's liable for that. So yes, it sounds like a viable option when you look at it on paper, but once you dig down into the detail, it becomes too risky. Thus, as far as I know, no other council has entered into such a agreement.
Just with regards to that, are we able to focus on our website to say that these are the steps that we've taken, this is why we've taken them, and just making people, or giving the people the ability to look this information up for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, people have right, all that information is available, so the opinions should be based on fact, rather than the previous meetings, but we make it easy for them.
Yeah, so increase the comms in terms of that is.
They're big, I think that would be great.
Okay, so people that are still, Russell.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just 2 points. The earlier point of us being cognizant and responsible for having a focus on animal welfare control and meeting the modern requirements. We've always had that focus. We've always been cognizant of that, even and being realistic about potential costs figures in discussions with Carterton. So that's been the next space, and that's continuing on, particularly about it's provided by 2 meetings with an officer from MPI who want to see a delivery result. Another question and clarification from the council guest's topic, just that clarification. The topic came up last time, and I think I don't think you mentioned it this time, but it didn't come up last time, that for good control and due control of costs, and get over to a private limitation we place the established elements we can deliver
monitors of welfare and compliance, and also one that's due cost reason.
Alison, looking.
Yes, I have two questions. First one is, you're aware that I appointed weeks ago, last week. Costs suggested to get it out, so I'm really interested as to, given that the other two councils have not progressed at all in regard to this, but have just gone out and we reopened discussions with Carter to contribute to the house. So we can answer that question first. Second.
Well, I think we might. So, I mean, I was going to wait till the resolution passed, but I can announce that we are currently in discussions with Carsten District Council on MOU to actually now use the resultant account as a shared account. And that we contributed both CapEx and OpEx on our account. I mean, that this is not set in concrete, but certainly the discussions are progressing, which is a very favorable result for us and also justifies our.
The second question I have is to the use of the account and the people who stores are using it. And Rebecca raised this point about the penalties of people who stores are at the moment it's $80 for their first offence. That doesn't seem to be much when we're talking $500 million facility. And a very small number of people in the Canada. What's the maximum number of jobs we get to add?
At one time,
Yeah.
I think 7.
So 7 families are getting the use of a facility that is costing like $500,000 for $80. Yeah. So I think the situation has changed because we're now coming back and asking for more money. I believe that it's time to revisit our decision on the fees that we are charging people and actually say to people, we are building a facility because you don't look out for your animals. So you need to contribute at a much higher rate than $80 a time.
So would you like us to add it as an action item to
Well,
rework
it's
the
a
fees of charges?
people.
Well, no, that's I think a discussion for the committee on fees and charges that take into account the actual costs and are split by the business company.
So we set, we set our fees and charges in. So, and it does require a consultation process to do that. So doing it in one may not be necessary. Look at the total fees and charges as we do actually, so we literally make sure that that's taken into consideration. Setting the fees and
So
charges.
totally agree, also that we do need to look at that, but it needs to be looked at.
Well, we'll put it down for obviously we're going to consult him that
Actually,
yes.
yeah, we put it as an action item. Oh, look at it.
It's precisely what I was going to ask.
Yeah. Oh, so we've got that action item, okay, right. Oh,
No, so I just want to make a comment, and I guess one of the swinging points for me to a large extent, because there's also a lot of money to swing because no matter what the future of local government is, we've seen through a lens what it may look like in the future, but Marston, they're going to spend a lot of money on their dog pound. Carlton are in a prime position, in my view, to look at either Marston or South Wairarapa for housing their individuals. And I think that's a very good move because we're always going to need one down there.
And I think you're right, that even if it was one council in Wairarapa, there's still be a need for a whole.
Absolutely.
Because of distances.
Yeah, and that's fine.
Thanks.
And I think when you mentioned that with regards to Carter, that they may be looking at it, would they be looking at coming on board with these expenses? So what we're actually putting through today may not
It's
actually.
hard to say at the moment, and because at the moment we're in discussions, more will come of that, but they won't give us.
Yeah, and yeah, completely, yes, sorry, they won't, but I.
There's also just for clarity to answer this question. They're not looking to make a capital contribution to the CapEx that they're paying a fee for service for use of it. And the fee for service will include an amount that recognises the council's capital contribution.
That's good news, in development that will help what we're doing today.
So with what we're doing today, there may be due to that. So while we may be putting forward either 75,000 or 116,500. Some of that funding may be eased if they come on board.
I didn't want to mention, that's why I didn't want to mention it until afterwards, because it's the email is not signed. So we can't.
And we've still got to make.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So
we've got, we have to build that. We can enter an embryo.
And if we build it, they will come.
You said it.
Okay,
Move that we, adopt one three, which is option two, to resolve the unbudgeted provision for an increase of 116,500 of CapEx.
yeah, with the hope that you won't need it.
Sorry, he won't need it.
So we have this. Russell,
Just the councillors, accounting minds and units, so the difference between option one and option two is a figure of 41,500. But it's what you're achieving for option two, it's pragmatism and sort of risk management.
so,
Just that if the other option does go ahead, it's we're going to build something bigger. No.
We built in capacity, and we thought ahead in terms of if we were to increase it. Secondly, we've also thought about if we were to be used as a emergency centre for people whose animals need to be stored somewhere, we've actually built capacity in terms of that exercise. So we're trying to future-proof as much as we can, not only in terms of how we affect the environment and the footprint, which has always been the topic of conversation around the table. We've looked at that and been innovative. Also, we thought about if we needed to increase the net, and we have.
It's best to do it now.
Yeah.
so option 3 has been moved, it has been seconded by Lee. Do we want more discussion on this?
Recommendation.
Recommendation 3, yeah. Recommendation 3, option 2. All those in favour?
Before we do that, I just want to make a comment. So through this planning. Right, to the rents. This has been around since 2015. And we're now 7 years down the track. 2015 was going to cost what?
You had budgeted 240.
Yeah, so here we are 7 years down the track. And we're going to fix this now. And unfortunately, I hate to do this, really, but if we don't do this now, it just gets worse.
And not doing it 7 years.
Yeah.
And the cost of those.
So we've made,
Yeah, we definitely
we're
get
making a decision.
Yeah, with all due respect, you don't have 7 years on.
So it's just another data that I'm sorry that this council has to sign.
So we have to move the second, all those in favour? Aye. Those against? I'm not again. The motion is carried.
So I just make an offer, as a dog owner, I can see that we get plenty of river right with the tag, you can, your dog's lining up. So
For comfort.
Yeah.
Maybe we could adopt the.
Thank you. Thank you, Brad.
So the contract for the main body has been tendered and accepted and is in process.
Correct.
Right, correct. So we're on our way.
Yeah.
We set out main body costs of the capacity.
Yes, just as a heads up, is I know there's been, these 4 or 5 discussions in terms of location. Just because I thought it would be, while you're here, we've actually changed the location. We've decided, we've had discussions with, Potomac guys, and they raised some issues that we've accommodated in terms of we found that we're, we believe, a win-win situation for all parties concerned. And I just got an email just to sort of print it off, but I wanted councillors just to sort of get a copy, rather than it go straight out for a public. So, done something.
We run the constitution on that.
Yep.
We need to potentially carve a little bit of this land should free work out of this. So I was looking at that, we're looking at a subdivision of this, so. So we're going to see that.
We still need to know what the government's intention is with regards to that. And then we also, the council needs to bring up, we've always said, we need to involve within the council and whether or not it needs to sit in a different lots of ownership and council. So I think that's still a progress that will be.
Three units again, that doesn't necessarily resolve.
Really,
3 units a year, that has to be resolved on the council because council approved the purchase and now you're changing the requirements to that plan, so it needs to come back to council to approve.
we need a report from officers about it, and but we can't get that report if we don't make up the mind. Cool.
That's a good idea.
It's on there, so everything's hunky dory with fucking motor.
Yes, I believe so. So we had a meeting on site.
Okay.
Tuesday.
Yeah.
And,
That does resolve all the.
yeah, managed to resolve it. And I gave them a heads up of exactly what you're seeing now. Were they happy with it? Yeah, they said, well, I'm not received anything coming back, so.
Looks like it might have some nice shade there with those trees around it.
So the meeting on site took place last Thursday. I have three groups. Site walkover, visualisation of what should be, which we just shared with you. The overall comment at the time on site was, I think what should be is they was. They were going to have a discussion with me, and then come back with your email to me since Friday, Monday. That's
Yeah, it looks like it will address most of your issues. But
Notice of the new site. There's a driveway that's which for a dog there.
It's pretty good. Well done, Jerry.
Thank you very much. Okay, guys, Robert Steve Green. If I can, so that company, will turn.